Hello, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for attending my webinar today. So I will just be giving a brief introduction about myself, about my company, run you through what we'll be running through. Do hope you get some useful hints and tips through today's session. We will also be hosting a Q&A at the end of this webinar. You should have an option to post some questions down at the bottom there. So if you do have anything that you do want to ask, please do just feel free, and we can very much just take that at the end of the webinar there. Let me just get up this PowerPoint for you all now. So I am hoping everybody can see that. Do raise your hand or send an emoji or anything if you can't see the PowerPoint behind me now. But without any further ado, oh, we do have that. So one can't see the webinar. So let me just see this. So hopefully that's come up for everybody now. Okay, wonderful. So just an introduction to my organization for anyone in this session who's not all that familiar at the moment. So with that, we are a life sciences recruitment company called Sienta. We are globally operating with offices in the US, in the UK, and also within Switzerland, with placements with it all across Europe, within the US, and also some within Asia as well. We do each have consultants in specialized areas, so we do cover 9 different disciplines. But for now, of course, today is going to focus on the medical affairs discipline itself. For myself, I have been working within medical affairs recruitment for the last 6 years now. I've successfully worked across 11 countries, all across the EU, experienced from placing everyone from MSLs all the way up to global heads of medical affairs. So far, I've worked across 9 different therapy areas, inclusive of rare disease indications. And with that, I'm hoping that some of the experiences I've had over the last 6 years are going to prove useful for you today. So, there is an option to zoom in as well on some of the data. So I think it's going to be useful on slide 3. But just for now, what we're going to be going through is the different factors that are going to affect your hiring process. So for this, we're going to take everything into consideration: the market conditions, how you're setting up your searches, different ways of establishing that first point of contact with key talent in the market, and best practices for engaging with these guys from the initial contact all the way to presenting an offer as well. So the first one we're going to have a look at is what you need to be aware of in terms of the wider market conditions before starting your search. What's going to affect your hiring efforts? How active are the candidates, and what is a driving factor at the moment for people to consider new opportunities? So this is all very specific to medical affairs. So the data I have up for you here is from January 2020 all the way up to March 2023. And all of these data points are the amount of medical affairs positions open across 4 particular countries. So what we've focused on here is Germany, Switzerland, Belgium, and the UK. So this is essentially just showing the trends of the increase in demand throughout medical affairs for that time period. So even during 2020 in January, companies were still struggling to find key talents to really suit their needs. If we do kind of plot the average across, we can see that the demand is on a very kind of steady increase over these 3 years. Of course, during COVID, what we saw was quite a steep rise on posted roles. And that, of course, made it even more of a challenge to hire medical affairs professionals during this period. The demand increased, but the supply remained very steady. So right now, what we are seeing is a little bit of a dip coming out now. However, it's important to keep in mind that this is still almost double what it was at the start of 2020. So with this, candidates are presented with a lot more options than they've ever had to before. And just crunching our own numbers from internal within Sienta, we've also seen candidates are more willing to be involved in multiple hiring processes at the same time. So the average interview of a medical affairs professional during this time period went from about 1.3 interviews per active candidates up to about 3.7. So almost a 3 times increase in the amount of interview processes these active candidates are engaging in. For yourselves as hiring managers, what this means is that there is more effort to, first off, attract the attention of a candidate that is needed, but also more effort in terms of that engagement. So really analyzing your hiring process is going to be key to, first off, giving you your long list of potential recruits, but also making sure that once you've found that perfect person, you're the opportunity they want to pursue. So with that, the first thing that we're going to have a look at is really where are you hiring geographically speaking. So local changes in the market are always going to have a large impact in why people are looking, but also what they're looking for. So we've recently just done a salary indexation across Benelux. And what we've actually found is that the base salaries in the Netherlands have risen between 3 to 6%, obviously pretty significant. But then just across the border within Belgium, we've seen an average of a 10% increase in base salaries alone. This has caused a lot of people to kind of become a little bit more open to the market. They know that they can demand a little bit more for their skill sets. However, there's still not enough people to kind of meet the actual demand of people hiring at the moment. So part of that aspect is really understanding what other people are getting paid within the market. Of course, salary benchmarking is always going to be very critical. We will go into that detail a little bit more in just a moment. But also it's important to understand what talent pools you're able to draw from. So again, for example, we've recently had, well, not recently, but in the last year and a bit, had Brexit come through. Now, it's understandable to think this is, of course, going to make the biggest impact on the UK market, which, of course, it has with a little bit more of restriction of movement, no longer having EU visas. There's been a significantly decreased pool of candidates to draw from overseas. But even for those of you within wider Europe outside of the UK, it's also become harder to get UK talents into your organizations for those who are open to relocate if you can't support a visa, which I know is the situation for many biotech and pharmaceutical organized operating there today. So the more we kind of understand these external aspects that are affecting both the supply of potential candidates coming to the market, but also their motivators, then the more we understand how we can properly go about approaching these people for new opportunities. And that is where we come into step one of your hiring process, really defining the role. So this is going to set the tone for your entire hiring process from start to finish. And so it's critical to really understand what aspects you're doing, what steps need to be taken, and how this is going to affect the amount of people and how you engage. So if you do, for example, let's say you're writing up the job description, you've just identified a need. If you set the criteria of skill sets that you're looking for too broad, you're going to be engaging with hundreds of candidates, which, let's be honest, nobody really has the time for. There's also the possibility that you're going to lose the gems along with just the sheer volume you're receiving. Now, on the other side, if you do set your criteria too narrow and you're only open to engaging with those perfect 10 out of 10 candidates, then you're going to have too few to consider and your hiring process is not going to be secure. So with this, from my perspective, the best way to start off your really definition of the role is to set the absolute necessary criteria of what you're looking for. This starts with a bit of internal kind of reflection. So you need to understand what gaps are you currently missing in the existing team. It could be something of we just need an MSL in this particular region. It could be we need someone who has that skill and that personality to be able to grow into a leadership role, or maybe you're lacking some scientific knowledge that you'd like to bring into the team as well. So really understanding those gaps is going to be crucial to understand the person who needs to come in and fill them themselves. So really here, you need to think about what they do very much need to be doing in the role, how they can hit the ground running, but also understand what you yourself don't have the time or the resources to teach them, to kind of upboard them when they do join you as well. I would recommend being quite strict when it comes to this element. Again, the more criteria you set here, the less people you are going to have to consider. So the next step, once you've got the absolute necessity here, is the advantageous experience. what skills are going to be amazing for a candidate to come to you with, but keep in mind what could you honestly do without as well. Secondly, we also have to think forward thinking as well here. So are you approaching people who can evolve with the role as well? Will this position keep the potential candidate engaged? The worst nightmare is to get somebody engaged, they can't grow with it, or the role can't grow matching their ambitions, and the role reopens 6, 8, 12 months later, and you're always back to start one. So another element that we do have to consider this early on in the process, and it's something that's usually a little bit overlooked, is really defining your own sales pitch. Now, I'm sure everybody in this webinar has had people pitching to yourself. Let's face it, there's probably been a recruiter, and it's probably been this morning. So it's important to consider what information have you been presented with before, how it's been delivered, and then use that to adapt into your own pitch as well while you're presenting to candidates. That first point of contact is going to be very, very crucial. So make sure you know the pitch, make sure you know the attractive qualities of both this position and your company before you start engaging with candidates. So this includes what differentiates your company from others. And moreover, what would you offer as a hiring manager that other people just simply cannot? Once all of that is defined, we are able to jump into the process. So this, again, is going to be really pretty crucial because we've seen a few studies. One recently from Career Builder has shown that 83% of candidates who have shared a negative interview experience can change their opinion of a company that they previously liked. So even if you've done everything external you can, you're coming from a company that is extremely well known with a very positive impression. If your interview process is negative for these candidates, it is more than likely that they will change the opinion of both the organization and the opportunity halfway through the process if this step is not done correctly. So this is going to essentially dictate your candidate retention throughout the interview process, how many dropouts you might have, everything up until how they would consider a counteroffer from their current should we get to offer stage. We've also seen that speed is, of course, very crucial. So a LinkedIn study has shown that a fast process is 1.6 times more likely to get a successful hire compared to a slow one. So even if you have the dream company, the dream job, if you drag it out too much, you're hurting your own chances of getting these people on board. So this is kind of what you do need to consider once you've started defining your process. Who from your company is going to be involved, but also consider why. Please, there are always times where people are just added in because they wish to be, but they're not actually bringing any value in terms of the decision-making process, defining the candidates, or providing good information to the candidates to help keep them engaged during this process. So defining the stakeholders is very crucial at this point. Something that we've experimented with is actually including that interview process in the job description. It gives transparency to these candidates, which immediately does increase their commitment. They know what to expect. They know what's going forward. And that actually does kind of give them a little bit more peace of mind and security to start the application process with particular organizations. Something to keep in mind is to be consistent. Halfway through, if you are looking at kind of the new candidates you have coming through, it is quite easy to lose focus on that own goal, to change your goalposts halfway through. This usually sows chaos into an interview process, into a job description, and can very much kind of lengthen the time it takes for you to get the right person on board. So now that we've defined how you're going to find this, how you're going to get this process through, it's now time to kind of consider what and how to attract that best candidates. So this has to be done before really advertising the job or going to market. So basically here, it's important to understand what are the motivators of the candidates that you're going to be searching for. Is there going to be something about your particular company that can offer them really kind of cutting edge science? Is it a really fantastic flexibility opportunity? Are they trusted? Are they being able to work autonomously? Everything from here is really important to consider so that your pitch to the candidates are kind of key, but you also know that the people you're engaging with are going to be bringing the right motivations for your team. So what are you also offering the candidates at this point in terms of, again, kind of salary benchmarking, flexibility, autonomy, the products they'll be working with, the people they'll be working with, and the culture they will be engaging with? Where are your candidates? Now, this one I don't mean by country. How do they look for job opportunities? Where do you have to be going to make sure that you're in the same room as the best talent in the market? Of course, you can always look on things like LinkedIn, but this can change region by region. I know, for example, Xing is extremely popular within Germany, and there's actually a surprisingly low crossover between LinkedIn and Xing. So going to these, and Xing is essentially a career website for specifically focused on Germany for those who are unaware, but there are more people on there in terms of that there won't be on LinkedIn either. So really making sure you have the right places that you're advertising, where you're looking for the right people is going to be crucial for you guys as well. Of course, salary benchmarking, you need to make sure that you know you're competitive for the in the market. I'm certain we all do our jobs because we absolutely love the day-to-day activities and the people we work with, but none of us do it for free. So that salary benchmarking is always going to be an important aspect to be considered. And then finally, how's your company perceived? I don't know the last time, but it's always good to kind of check on your own kind of glass doors, because this is where candidates will first engage before even thinking about applying for a company or going forward to an interview process. So just make sure in terms of your reputation, you know how externally your organization is very much perceived. This entire kind of process is going to be very vital. So all of this is going to help you engage those active candidates. But in reality, 80% of the talent on the market isn't open for new opportunities or even hearing about them. These people are not looking through LinkedIn advertisements. They're not going to job boards on their weekends or anything like that. So in terms of kind of wider engagement, do be a little bit creative. I will say, I know I'm a bit biased here, but this is where a recruiter can really come in useful, as well as we proactively approach those non-active people on the market to really give you as clients the best overview of the people you would be able to be onboarded in. So once we have done all of that and we know exactly how we're going to attract the best talent, at this point, you will have direct applicants coming in, people coming back to your job ads, potentially a recruiter sending you a long list of CVs. So right here is where we kind of say, okay, these are my options. Where are the best people? What are the best things that I can consider? Who should I take forward and give my valuable time in terms of an interview process? So I just want to kind of take this back to one of the first slides. What skills can't you leave without? This is where we separated the necessity to the advantageous. Ideally, in this situation, you'd have maybe like 50 people within your long list in terms of kind of hitting that that kind of interest in your organization and the position. While reviewing, just remind yourself what are going to be the absolute necessities. You can clear out everybody who's not going to meet those. And once that's done, if we do still have a good amount of people, which usually we find could be between 20 and 30 for a role, 20 to 30 people who can do the job, that is when you can very much employ your advantageous skill and start making sure that you're highlighting the best people so far of what you've seen just through a CV. So this is where the metrics of the process come in. Of course, right here, it's important to secure up the process. You do want to give yourself a good amount of options, but you also don't want to be interviewing absolutely everybody who just hits that base criteria. So the best way that we kind of see it is that there are 20 people to be considered. Of those, you take 5 or 6 of them to the first round interview. This is where you're very much going to be getting to know their personality a little bit more, and yeah, essentially just engage them on the point. For those, out of those 5 or 6, you should be able to take 2 or 3 down to the next round. For most roles, this next round could be the final interview. And then ideally, at the end of this process, you'll have one amazing person who you are very interested to offer, you are certainly going to accept, and then you do have one as a backup. So that is kind of how I would recommend making sure you have a numerical value compared to the different standards and the different points within your interview processes. And here we go on to kind of communication in terms of how you're going to be talking to these candidates. Now, this first point really sets the tone for the whole relationship that's going to happen between you and the potential future peer or colleague that you are going to be speaking with. So what I always recommend personally is inviting them to the first round interview over a phone call. Now, I know this could seem a little bit peculiar. I know a lot of people do prefer to do this just by an interview, but the way we communicate over a phone call compared to an email is categorically extremely different. So a lot of the communication is tone, and if you are calling up these candidates for the first round and you're sounding exciting to get to know them and excited to actually meet them, then they're going to feel a lot more investment from yourself, and they will return that when it comes to the interview process. So just having that small tweak on that first engagement, even if it's a 2-3 minute call to find a time where both suits in your calendar, that's going to really make sure that they're very much invested from the first point. It also means you don't have to play a game of email ping pong to find 45 minutes available free in both of your busy schedules. So it's also a little bit quicker, which helps quite a bit as well. So this first call as well, in terms of when you are taking them into the first round of interview, this is where you really get to know that person, to understand their motivations, and really to also engage with them directly. Keep in mind, this person, if they are actively looking especially, is more than likely to have multiple first round interviews ongoing. So do make sure that you're sharing kind of the benefits of the position, the benefits of the company. And something I always recommend is make it personal. Share why you left your last role to join these guys. Share what you really love about what your current job is. Essentially, just these little personal touches just makes them come away with a much more memorable experience. And at the end of the day, the more memorable opportunity usually wins out over the more basic and kind of forgettable ones. So the next one is this first final interview stage. So we should already have all of this kind of very much, at least a good idea of what should be included here. Make sure those key stakeholders are involved. What information do you need from the candidate? What information can you give them? And this is a kind of a key point. How do you want to leave it? The best way from my experience to finish a first round interview is to give direct feedback during that same appointment at the end. Of course, this is a lot easier when there's only one of you interviewing. But if you are at a position where you can be decisive enough to give that feedback from that first one, it shows the kind of culture that you're promoting. If feedback can be done on that first call, shows you're decisive, fast moving. Keep in mind, a lot of these people might be looking to leave just because of the speed a company can make decisions. And if you are able to be in a position to give feedback on that first call, it already shows something that you have that their current opportunity might not. Do always just consider their motivators as well. And essentially, once you understand why they're looking for a new role, make sure that the feedback you're giving them, the information you're giving them, is relative to why they have kind of come to you as an interviewee. So this is, and then we move on to that final step, this final interview here. This is your opportunity to include anyone else who might be in the decision-making process. Again, be decisive, make sure we're being fast-moving. Keep in mind that 1.7 times more likely to get an acceptance from a candidate with a quick decision process. Something we've also been experimenting with a few of our clients as well is actually bringing on a peer into this final interview. So let's take an MSL, for example. I actually started to recommend bringing on another current MSL into this interview rounds, and there's actually two massive benefits from this. The interviewee gets an insight on what the day-to-day life work is looking like from someone who's currently doing it. So again, that security, that kind of transparency really comes across in this final interview. But the other massive benefit is the MSL you're bringing into the interview, they make them feel exceptionally valued. You care about their feedback. You're showing this already. You care about their opinion, and this has actually been shown to have an increase in current retention of your current employees. So not only will this increase your chances of getting someone new on board, but it also secures up your current employees and makes it less likely that you're going to have to start searching for their replacement anytime soon. So yeah, of course, after this, the next stage would be presenting these guys with an offer. So these are the kind of the key elements to consider once an offer is kind of coming through. I would also recommend to anyone who's kind of interviewing with the final interviewee is have a offer letter, at least a draft, kind of all ready to go pretty much immediately after that decision is made. This should always be within the same week, ideally within 1, maybe 2 days from final interview to an offer going out to that candidate. So at this point, you should know their kind of the key motivators, the salary they need, what they're looking for. So right now, you should know whether or not they are going to accept. Of course, always recommend having a backup. We all know recruitment can be a bit of an unpredictable process. For this, again, this is where the way you communicate is going to be very key. Always, I would recommend getting them on a phone call. Even better would be a video call. There's so much we communicate by tone, by body language, and they want to kind of show, well, essentially your excitement can be infectious. So if you are looking at these guys and you're showing you're excited to get it on board, it shows that just more excitement will be coming from them to kind of join and start working with you as well. For the written offer, this is where the draft should come in. So this should be prepared. All that should need to be filled out is just any variable details, but right after a verbal acceptance, this should be with a candidate in their email inbox, at least a soft copy. I know that hard copies are sometimes required, but a soft copy, just so they can review, is should be able to go out pretty quick after this final round. The thing we also do kind of recommend is managing that notice period. Some can be 3 months, some can be 6 months. In some areas, it's 6 months to the end of the quarter. So almost a year before they can really kind of join you for the more senior positions. So really just essentially keeping in contact with them. Ways like this we could do is just always kind of just give them a call to share any kind of updates about the position, to share kind of any updates or news about the company that's come through, and just kind of keeping that communication is really key to maintaining and just also shoring up the fact that these guys are definitely going to start with you. It's very rare that we do get someone dropping out while serving their notice period. But at the same point, you put a lot of effort into the interview process, into finding this perfect person. So anything we can do here to just increase the chance to 1-2% that they're going to successfully be coming on board to you is always kind of vital. So yeah, keeping that contact throughout is always very much recommended. Now, this is the area that none of us really like to do, the soft rejection. After you've engaged with 5, 6, 7 people, and one of them has gotten the job. So with this, although it's never particularly a fun activity, it is something I highly recommend always doing. Never leave kind of candidates in the dark about your feedback on them and the next steps. So essentially, you also never know what the future might hold. You might want to re-engage. And it's much better to end this process with a positive opinion of how you communicate during the interview process compared to a negative one. So everyone that kind of interacts with your company is also going to be an advocate. There are still candidates out there who very much, even if they do get rejected from an offer, can come away with a very positive opinion of how you kind of portrayed yourself, how the company cares. It is just really showing that you respected the time that they gave you during this interview process, even if they weren't ultimately successful. So just some kind of feedback, whether that be an email, whether that be a call, is always greatly appreciated. Something to also consider is potentially giving them feedback, if possible, on why they didn't get the job. It could just be that another candidate brought that little bit more experience, but just sharing that there was a reason gives them very much kind of a great peace of mind and does leave them with a much stronger and more positive opinion of interviewing with you guys. So yeah, that would very much be kind of the soft rejection process. That is everything I wanted to kind of bring you guys through today. So thank you so much for your time. If anybody has any questions they'd like to post in the thing, this would be the time. Of course, I'd be really interested to hear any feedback as well. So I'll be calling you guys over the next 1 or 2 weeks. So if you have any kind of feedback for myself, this is the first webinar that we're running through this series. So it'd be fantastic to hear what you thought, what else I might include that could be more valuable for the next one. We also are going to start these as a series. So if there's anything specific you could be interested in hearing about from a different perspective, do let me know, and we'll take that into consideration for our next one. One I just got through: would you change anything in an interview process for different seniorities? Okay, so essentially this could be anything from, let's say MSL compared to like a senior director. Honestly, no. I think the process, the search criteria should, of course, apart from the very specific skill sets, should remain the same in terms of how you approach the market, how you keep engagements with candidates. With the length of process, I also think should be the same. Keep in mind, you're still competing with a load of different people. You still want an informative and fast decision-making process. The only thing, of course, that you change is the stakeholders. A senior director is going to want to learn the insights from someone else compared to an MSL. So although it's tempting for the more senior positions to keep in, 4, 5, 6, 7 rounds of interviews, do keep in mind this is potentially going to create more dropouts, less engagement, and just a much harder time for yourself to engage and onboard people as well. Cool. Lovely. Well, I think that's the only question we did get through. So if anyone has any thoughts on what they'd like to ask, I'm hoping all of you have my email address at this point. As saying, I will be in contact as well. But if you are interested in any more information I can provide, please do not hesitate to reach out. For those of you who know me, I do love a good chat. So do feel free to call or email. Apart from that, thank you all very much for attending. I hope you found it useful. And yeah, have a wonderful rest of your week. Thank you very much.